Are we doing an intro or anything like that?
Um, this is the Disgruntled Crab and Rusty Culture most professional review show! So, with this most professional show that we've got going on, I figured we'd actually take it not so much of a review. We're actually going to do kind of a retrospective on Batman the Animated Series and work our way through the episodes just to kind of give an idea of how the episodes stack up. I would say we're not really going to do any spoiler sections. It's going to be the entire thing is going to be spoiler, mainly because my personal opinion, even though it's been a long time since I've actually watched them, I would recommend watching the entire series. So as we go through these, there's going to be spoilers all the way through. We're just going to be talking episode one, working our way through.
You've had 25 years, so if you're complaining about spoilers, this show's been out longer than I've been alive.
So, with our first episode, we're going to break down the pilot episode on Leather Wings. I will let you open us up, kind of your opening thoughts of this episode.
Should we give a disclaimer about if you're gonna watch it on HBO?
I would, yes. As you go through the episodes, apparently the streaming services don't really care what order the episodes are in. So, if you're trying to follow along with whatever we're doing here, we are actually going by the listed episodes as you will find them on such sites as IMDb or Wikipedia. So we're going by the release date of the schedule of the episodes. So as they were released, that's how we're going to go through them, not by the
Yeah.
order that's in HBO or whatever streaming service is going on right now.
Yeah, HBO has this one as number 3, so we almost made that mistake. Or I almost made that mistake.
That would have been
But yeah,
a very interesting discussion.
so I'm coming at this show at the perspective of I haven't seen very many of them. I've seen a couple of them, and apparently I've seen them out of order because I watched it on HBO. So I'm coming at the perspective. I did not grow up with this. I only watched them maybe less than a year ago was when I watched the few that I did watch. So yeah, I guess I'm coming in with more fresh eyes, and I like it. I like the first episode we watched so far, and the thing that really sticks out at me is it looks and feels like a comic book. And it's hard to explain why. I don't know if it's like the cell shading style of animation, if it's what it is. It just feels comic booky, to use that as an adjective.
I come from the opposite perspective is that I actually grew up with it. It was I was not a small lad, but I was in my early teens when it was on, and it really hooked me because just the absolute style of it, it really kind of captured the essence of what I think is Batman. So it's not one vision of it's not their particular vision. They kind of took the amalgamation of all of Batman that's been out there and wanted to bring it all together into one cohesive vision of a show, which is kind of interesting. And looking at the cultural milestones of the show, the main voice actor Kevin Conroy, who unfortunately, as we're recording this, just passed away a few days ago, kind of was known as the definitive voice of Batman. And just looking at his IMDb, he still had stuff coming out this year where he was voicing Batman 30 years after the show came out.
And
So
I've heard a lot of people say not only was he the definitive voice, but that this is the Batman that people think of when they think of Batman. You know, that not only is it the voice, but it's this character is the definitive Batman is what I've heard at least.
and reaching into this retrospective, just this show, little touchstone as we're going on the pilot, this actually was the basis for a lot of the WB animation. There was the Adventures of Superman that came out that was based off of this. The same team worked on that as well as a Justice League cartoon that carried on from that with the same voice actors working on it. So, this is quite a legacy that is with the show. And going back to the pilot episode, the thing that struck me is how they didn't do what WB is doing now, where everybody has to be the most iconic character they have. They can't delve into some of the characters that they don't know. The first episode is Batman investigating Man Bat, who most people have probably no idea what this character is. He's just a mutated man that's turned into a bat. And the police mistake him for Batman. So there's all these break ins going on around Gotham City. And Batman has to investigate this while being hunted by the police.
And you know, that 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 is basically all the episode is. And I really like that. It's really short. It's self-contained. It's we're so used to things now where everything is has to be a cliffhanger. Every single thing. And it's sickening sometimes to think that we never get just an episode of something anymore. It's there's never a beginning and an end. There's always a beginning and then a and then because they need to hook you for the next one. It's so refreshing and it's weird to say refreshing when talking about an older show, but it's so refreshing to have this contained story of the problem of Man-Bat is introduced in the beginning and it's solved by the end. And I have trouble sitting still sometimes. I'm a very antsy person, and this was such a breeze to watch, and I loved that about this. It's a nice short episode, but it's still a full and contained story within that short episode. I feel you don't get that very often anymore.
I didn't even think about that, but looking at something that is 30 years old, we are well before any type of streaming service, well before there was stuff coming out on VHS and stuff like that, but it wasn't something that was common to collect VHS because those big and bulky and added a lot of space. So a lot of shows had to be like this, where everything is kind of a self-contained episode because you didn't want a series built on, well, you have to watch every episode because if somebody misses it, this wasn't something where you can just look it up and watch it because you missed it. It's like, no, it was gone and you have to wait till it appeared again on reruns, and who knew when that was going to be. You'd have to look through the ancient TV guide, which I'm sure a lot of people are like, TV guide, what are you talking about?
Yeah, man, I never used a TV guide.
Looking at it, that's something I didn't even realize because uh I kind of grew up with non-serialized things, so a lot of episodes are just self-contained, and there might be stuff that will be brought up later on in further episodes, but it's not going to be stuff that's you know you have to have watched every episode to make sense of it.
Something from my understanding of Batman that I think this gets really right that I really liked that I think so many things don't is the Bruce Wayne Batman thing. I'm thinking of this there's a specific scene and maybe you can put it up on screen where he's at the Bat computer and the doctor, not Langstrom who is the Man Bat, but his father-in-law calls and Batman is in the Bat costume and puts on the Bruce Wayne voice.
Call for Master Bruce from a Dr. March.
Hey, what's up, Doc?
You have bats, Mr. Wayne. Common brown bats. They shouldn't pose a problem. As the weather gets colder, they'll move on.
What about the sound on the tape?
It's actually two sounds, starlings and brown bats. Probably fighting over a nest in your chimney.
Appreciate the help, Doc. I'll return the favor next time you're raising funds. Bye-bye.
And it's just this perfect image showing the difference between those two, because the voice does not fit with the character we're seeing on screen. Because I think you're supposed to think of Bruce Wayne and Batman as two different people, and he very much sets
And
up those
looking
two
at,
different
I've seen some
personalities.
of the uh, making of stuff, and they kind of made a big point that they wanted the two characters to be extremely different, and Kevin Conroy kind of played it up that Bruce Wayne was the mask that Batman wore. Batman is actually who he is when he thinks of himself. He's like, he's Batman, and he's playing as Bruce Wayne when he's out in the world. One of the things I wanted to mention, because I noticed it right off the bat, because I'm familiar with the voice actor, is since it's the pilot episode, they were having other voice actors do stuff. So the very first character you get is one of the Gotham City pilots who's flying the blimp, and it's Kevin Conroy doing a higher voice. So it's like it sounded odd to me because I was like, "That's Kevin Conroy," and he's doing a separate voice.
I did not notice that. That's funny. But yeah, I think it does that whole concept very well, and I'm excited to see going forward if they stick with that, because so much stuff gets it wrong. I think even, or in my opinion, gets it wrong. Because I think of that new Batman movie, which I will disclose I only watched half of. I got bored. Um, but it seems like the Batman, Bruce Wayne in that is the same as Batman, and it's just a whiny kid. And to me, that's not what you're going for here. Bruce Wayne has to be different from Batman, because if you're really looking at Gotham City, Batman or Bruce Wayne is kind of an obvious pick for Batman if he's not being the exact opposite of what Batman is. I think that's where that idea of the playboy mentality is, because you think of him as this rich, pampered buffoon who couldn't possibly be a superhero. And that is part of the disguise. At least that's how I've always understood it. And I don't think a lot of movies and stuff have gotten that right.
That is something that some comics have actually worked with for kind of the iconic characters on DC's side. I've actually seen images, not so much Batman, but Superman. They actually had they were basic on the same physical style, but they would have Clark Kent be really slouched and have horrible posture, and he's just a completely different person because he's selling the fact that Clark Kent and Superman are two different people. And that's kind of the same way I believe a lot of the really basically the best performances of like Bruce Wayne and Batman are portrayed. The other one that comes to mind is Batman Begins, when Christian Bale is kicking people out of his mansion, and he plays up the fact that he's completely drunk and just wants these people gone because Ra's al Ghul is there, and they're going to have a throwdown, and Ra's al Ghul doesn't care who's there. So Bruce is trying to get rid of everybody without causing the scene of, I need to get everybody out because they're in danger. It's like, no, just get out, drink my liquor, get out of my house.
So yeah, I think that was probably my favorite thing about this episode was that scene I described where you have Batman in the costume doing the Bruce Wayne voice. And I think it really hammers home that exactly what you said, that Bruce Wayne is the persona, Batman is the person.
And it does seem really odd when you have the voice because even some of the mannerisms that the artist threw into it change when Batman's doing the voice. He doesn't have as many hard edges when he's putting on that voice. I was just looking through the list of characters that we have in this because again, for this episode being the pilot episode, it's a really simple plot. It's Batman versus Man Bat while being hunted by the cops. Which actually, that was one thing I wanted to bring up before I bring up the actors. I was really happy to see that the creators of the show are well aware that not everybody that fights the protagonist is necessarily an evil bad guy that can be murdered. I see way too many things nowadays where they completely forget that just because somebody has a disagreement with the protagonist and they're fighting doesn't mean that they can go around murdering them. It's like these are actually Gotham City police that are just following they're doing their job trying to stop Batman because they think he's breaking into all these chemical factories stealing stuff. So Batman is trying to disable the police but isn't stopping them by murdering them, which happens way too much in movies and television now where this this side is fighting the hero. So obviously they're evil. We'll just kill them. It's like, but wasn't the hero on their side 5 minutes ago? Aren't they friends with some of these people that they're now just murdering with abandon and glee most of the time?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think that's what makes Batman interesting is this idea that I've always liked where, Superman is kind of seen as the paragon. Everyone loves Superman. The public loves Superman. He's this great figure that represents hope. Whereas Batman, I like the idea of nobody really likes him. And that's always kind of been my favorite depiction of where people in general are kind of like, well, he's getting rid of criminals, but he's kind of a criminal himself. He's kind of a bad guy too. And this idea of the police hunting him has always been more fascinating to me than the idea of him just being, an associate to the police.
And not only that, we're seeing actually some of the in this episode. You get a little bit of the political machinations that are going on in Gotham City because you have the commissioner who's hasn't agreed to this manhunt, but the mayor's like, fine, that seems okay. We if Batman's gone rogue, we need to stop him. So he gives Detective Bullock the go ahead to form a task force to hunt the Batman. And in this, even though it's an episode of Man Bat, we have several key characters that are just introduced without really any fanfare. There's no big, oh my god, it's him. Were you even aware that the district attorney, who that
Wait,
was?
hang on. Let me see if I can name some of them. Harvey was the district attorney, Two-Face.
Yep.
Um, I think I just knew that one because I knew that he was the district attorney. Give me some hints to some other ones. Jog my memory.
Well, basically, we had Commissioner Gordon.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of mentioned, who we had, um, and Bullock is kind of the one I was pointing at was Harvey Dent is just there, being the district attorney, like, flipping a coin, which is something that is iconic for the character, but it's not. It's also kind of a nervous habit that he has, so it's not just in there for fan service. It's kind of part of his persona.
Yeah, I'm excited to go forward. I really am. I don't think I watched as much of it as I thought I had. Just looking through my HBO, it looked like I hadn't watched nearly as many episodes. And the fact that I didn't watch them in the right order means I'm probably going to see quite a few that I didn't see before. So, yeah.
Looking at, I'm just looking at some of the actors, and some of them I was like, I never would have guessed, which is actually amazes me because this came out before the internet was really big. It might have, I forget exactly when the internet, this might have been right at the internet's infancy. So I didn't have the internet at the time. So I just remember that looking through and seeing some of the credits, I wasn't able to compare some of the names. So some of them, even though they had the same name, I'm like, that doesn't sound like him at all. So I was like, it must be somebody else with the same name. And was looking at Harvey Dent. I never realized that he was Richard Mull, who was a big actor. He was known for a big part in in another sitcom in the 80s, Night Court, and that's kind of what he's known for. That's his role. He played the kind of the large bailiff on that show. And I didn't realize he was in this show until now, just looking at him like, no way.
Now he's not in this episode, but Mark Hamill is in this show too, isn't he? As the
Yes.
Joker.
That was actually the one that I was speaking of, where I saw his name in the credits and I was like, it can't be. That can't be Luke Skywalker. There's no way. It was just like, it must just be another guy in Hollywood named Mark Hamill. I didn't realize until much later on, until I was actually able to see it. No, that was really him. Like, huh, it's odd. Just looking at the animation, what were your impressions of it?
Hang on, let me pull up a screenshot.
I'm not talking actually so much the images. I'm actually talking about how the animation is drawn and how it flows.
You know, I would not look at it and say, "Oh, this was made in 1992 or whatever year it was made, 97, whatever it was." You know, it survived the test of time. Everything moves really well. That stuff doesn't jump around the screen like you see in some of the early Disney stuff. You know, like when you look at some of the old animation, that some of the first stuff, it was really jumpy a lot of times. When they tried out rotoscoping, everything just looked really weird. So I think it looks hand drawn, but it's well done. This is something that I think could be made today. And sure, maybe it'd look a little more shiny and polished, but this is something that I don't really see how you could improve, because if you're doing it hand drawn the way they did it, I think it's very well done. The characters look realistic enough, but not to the point where it's uncanny valleying you. They still look like cartoonish. Cartoonish is not the right word, but they look drawn. They're drawn people, and they're definitely stylized. I love Batman's square jaw. I don't know, it adds to his tough lookingness, how square and boxy he is, how broad his shoulders are, as I'm looking at a screenshot of him standing atop a building. I like it. I think it's very well done, and I have no complaints about it.
I was actually surprised going back and looking at it because I was expecting to be, oh no, these are gonna be rose colored glasses. I'm gonna go back and look at it, and it's like, oh, this is awful. Because, but I the thing that I was expecting to see that I didn't see is a lot of old shows. There would be a lot of static images, and only the things that had to move would be the things that were animated. So you would see the mouth move, but most of the body, it's every part of, everybody speaking with their body. There's actually
Right.
animation all the time on the characters. So it's not just here's their head and their mouth is moving so that, we can save on the animation budget because I can just move my mouth and that will cause the same thing. It's every every part of them is involved with it. It's like they feel like actual people because they're moving around. And I was blown away to see that because there was one scene that I thought would it's still an amazing animation shot. And I was curious as we're going back to watch this if that was where they spent all their budget and everything else would be, toned down for that. And I was glad to see that that's not the case. But the one animation that I find just holds up so well and is still such an amazing shot is when Batman has a grapple around Man Bat and he's being pulled behind him around this blimp. And Man Bat flies up above the blimp and ends up coming close to the tail, and Batman has to twist and work his way around. And the amount of just effort that had to go into that to make that work from an animation style, because all the way through that there is not a static shot that they can work with. All the characters, the blimp, are moving at every single time, and there's the way Batman moves, it's just an amazing animation shot. And it boggles the mind the amount of effort that had to be in to make that animation work.
Yeah, people used to care about the stuff they made, man. No, I agree. And even when they do use static images, because some of the backdrops are just a static image that they're animating over, those works of art behind them are beautiful. Like I just look at this shot, the one I keep looking at as I'm just browsing through screenshots online is the one of Batman standing atop the building with the orange sky behind him, and he's just a silhouette. And I'm like, that is awesome. That gives such character to the city, and you have these dark uniform looking buildings around him.
So
And it's
you're looking at the basically the intro,
yeah.
which is just iconic. It is a self-contained little Batman story in the intro, and it's one of those intros that's like I can watch it every time because it's just so much effort is put into it, and it's the music, all of the animation, and just the care that was put into it. It just oozes from every just frame of this cartoon.
The music in that theme song is something I didn't even know was ingrained into me, but it is. Like, as soon as I heard it, I was like, "Ooh, there it is." No, I love it. If you haven't seen it, go watch it for sure.
And you can always keep coming back because we're going to be working our way through the entire series. Our next episode that's on the block is Christmas with the Joker.
Hey, we get a little Mark Hamill.
Yes. Bring him in for the second episode. So this one we had basically an unknown, and then we're hitting it kind of with the most iconic of Batman's villains, the Joker.
I don't know, man. What about the Condiment King?
I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I've relished this meeting. You, the dynamic Dark Knight, versus me, the conceptual Condiment King. Come, Batman. Let's see if you can cut the mustard. Oh, quiet.